Hey Keith, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. I'm so happy that you joined me today. As I discussed with you when we talked on the phone, that the first meeting is generally just going over a lot of the paperwork and the documents and stuff, and just getting to understand why you want therapy and how I can help you and what your goals are. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the same documents at your doctor's office and stuff of confidentiality, privacy, informed consent. And so I sent you an email so that way you can sign the documents and send them back to me. And during our session now, I will share my screen with you. And so then that way we can discuss it. If you have any questions, you can ask me. And so that way we can make sure that there's no confusion or anything like that. And so does that still work for you?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me. I don't do this very often.
Technology is great.
It is great. It is great. Oh, okay. I'm going to
I
open
can
this
still
up.
read that if that's okay with you.
Well, I was wanting it to be like the whole screen. And so I will start here. Um, there we go. That's a little bit better. So it's a little bit bigger. Can you read that clear?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. And so it just has my name and my phone number, address up at the top. You can reach me at that phone number if you need to send me mail or anything. You can send it to that address. Um, because we are doing our therapy sessions through telehealth via electronics, there is the consent for telehealth electronic communication. I understand that my healthcare provider wishes me to engage in a telehealth electronic communication, i.e., text, phone calls, emails, telehealth sessions. My healthcare provider explained to me how the technology that will be used to effect such a communication will not be the same as a direct client healthcare provider visit due to the fact that I will not be in the same room as my same room as my provider. And so that just means that because we're not actually in person and we're doing things through the computer, it's definitely different. Both both methods have their own benefits and not such good benefits, as you could say, I guess.
I imagine
Um,
it's probably hard to read people's body language when they're on a video.
it definitely can be challenging, and sometimes it can be challenging to build a relationship being, through a computer. And also, some people might have a better ability to attend therapy because it's, remote and they can meet them where they're at. So there's different pros and cons to each side. So yeah, and then this is also stating that you understand that telehealth electronic communication has potential benefits, including easier access to care and convenience of meeting from a location of my choosing. So you can be anywhere that you're at, although when you are in a car or if you're around other people that can hear you or hear our conversation, I just would ask that you kind of separate yourself from them so that way they don't hear our conversations because everything between you and I is private. And if you do have someone else that is overhearing the conversation, I will need to be able to have you sign a release of information to grant them the access to hearing our conversations.
Okay.
Because otherwise, what is said between you and I stays between you and I. Um, in which we'll talk about that a little bit more later on once we get down to the confidentiality and stuff. Um, Just like there are benefits, there are also risks to the technology, including interruptions, unauthorized access, technical difficulties, stating that you understand that your healthcare provider um, or you can discontinue the telehealth consult visit if it is felt that the video conferencing connections are not adequate for the situation. So if you don't have good service, if your internet's not working, if we can't understand each other, we could also always hang up doing the video and just do phone calls. Um, if that, comes down to it, whichever one you feel most comfortable with. Um, And then this last one says that you've had a direct conversation with your provider, which is me, during which you had the opportunity to ask questions in regard to this procedure. Your questions have been answered, and the risks, benefits, and practical alternatives have been discussed with you in a language in which you understand. And so
Yes.
I want to give you this opportunity if you have any questions. There's more to go over as well, and so you can ask more questions as we go along. But are there any questions that you have from these 5 points so far?
No, it's pretty familiar.
Okay, awesome. Next is consent to use the telehealth by Simple Practice service. Telehealth by Simple Practice is the technology service that I use or that we use to conduct our telehealth video conferencing appointments. Electronic communications may be done via phone, computer, or other electronic device. For telehealth appointments, there are no passwords required to log in. By signing this document, you acknowledge that telehealth by Simple Practice is not an emergency service, and in the event of an emergency, you will use your phone to call 911. Though my provider and I may be in direct virtual contact through the telehealth service, electronic communication, neither Simple Practice nor the telehealth service provides any medical or healthcare services or advice, including but not limited to emergency or urgent medical services. The telehealth by Simple Practice service facilitates video conferencing and is not responsible for the delivery of any healthcare, medical advice, or care. And you do not assume that your provider, which is me, has access to any or all of the technical information in the telehealth or Simple Practice service, or that such information is current, accurate, or up to date. I will not rely on my healthcare provider to have any of this information in the telehealth by Simple Practice service. To maintain confidentiality, I will not share my telehealth appointment link with anyone unauthorized to attend the appointment. So what will happen is that you will get an email and a text message, and both of which contain a link, and that will send you over. It'll either send you over to the web, or if you download the app, it'll send you into the app, and then you will be able to log in, and it will be a link that's only shared between you and I, and so it's private and confidential. And so that way we don't run the risk of someone unknown interrupting our sessions. But there is always a risk because, there are hackers out there and we can't control everything. Um, so, yeah, and if you have any emergencies or if anything is happening while we're on video, like if there's some health stuff going on, I may need to call emergency services for you, or encourage you to call emergency services to be able to get the care that you need. And so I hope that that doesn't happen, although it could. And so, uh, since I'm not a medical professional, I will refer you to the proper services.
I understand.
Okay. And so at the third page, you'll sign this, print, sign, and date, confirming that you understand. And then the next one is the notice of privacy practices, and which I'm going to move this over here. This is just talking about HIPAA violations or HIPAA laws, which is your information not being shared to any agencies or people without your consent. In order for me
That's
to
the
share what?
that's the purpose of the ROIs, correct?
That is the purpose of the ROIs, in which you can dictate whether you want someone to have full access or limited access, and you can choose what information you would like to share. So that way it's not just all of your information being shared. Um, and so there are some situations where I will have to break confidentiality. Um, and so I will get into that in just a second. This is stating that I am a healthcare professional and I understand that health information about you or your healthcare is personal. I'm committed to protecting health information about you. I create a record of the care and services you receive from me. I need this record to provide you with quality care and to comply with certain legal requirements. This notice applies to all of the records of your care generated by this mental health care practice. This notice will tell you about the ways in which I may use and disclose health information about you. I also describe your rights to the health information I keep about you and describe certain obligations I have regarding the use and disclosure of your health information. I am required by law to make sure that protected health information, PHI, that identifies you is kept private. Give you this notice of my legal duties and privacy practices with respect to health information. Follow the terms of the notice that is currently in effect. I can change the terms of this notice, and such changes will apply to all information I have about you. The new notice will be available upon request in my office and on my website.
Okay.
And then this next section, it talks about how I may use and disclose health information about you. It says the following categories describe different ways that I use and disclose health information. For each category of uses or disclosures, I will explain what I mean and try to give some examples. Not every use or disclosure in a category will be listed. However, all the ways I am permitted to use and disclose information will fall within one of these categories. For treatment payment or healthcare operations, federal privacy rules, regulations allow healthcare providers who have direct treatment relationship with the patient or client to use or disclose the patient or client's personal health information without the patient's written authorization to carry out the healthcare provider's own treatment, payment, or healthcare operations. I may also disclose your protected health information for the treatment activities of any healthcare provider. This too can be done without your written authorization. For example, if a clinician were to consult with another licensed healthcare provider about your condition, we would be permitted to use and disclose your personal health information, which is otherwise confidential, in order to assist the clinician in diagnosis and treatment of a mental health condition. Disclosures for treatment purposes are not limited to the minimum necessary standard because therapists and other healthcare providers need access to the full record and or full and complete information in order to provide quality care. The word treatment includes, among other things, the coordination and management of healthcare providers with a third-party consultations between healthcare providers and referrals of a patient for healthcare from one healthcare provider to another. Lawsuits and disputes. If you are involved in a lawsuit, I may disclose health information in response to a court or administrative order. I may also disclose health information about your child in response to a subpoena, discovery request, or other lawful processes or processed by someone else involved in the dispute, but only if efforts have been made to tell you about the request or to obtain an order protecting the information requested. So I wouldn't do that unless I absolutely had to, and unless you were informed about that request. And so in the healthcare referrals, it just depends on the situation and the agency. If I make referrals to another agency, that generally gives a release of information to discuss with that agency your care and why they need your services. And still, even then, I will be very minimal in what I do share. I will only share the necessary information. And then once you are connected with that agency, then you can disclose whichever information you choose. And so, yeah, do you have any questions regarding that?
No, I'm familiar with the ROA process.
Okay, perfect. And so all the rest of this is pretty much the same as that. I just like to make sure that everything is out there, so everything's clear. Certain uses and disclosures require your authorization. Psychotherapy notes. I do keep psychotherapy notes, as that term is defined in the 45 CFR. And any use or disclosure of such notes requires your authorization unless the use or disclosure is for my use in treating you, for my use in training with a supervisor to help improve my skills in group, joint family, or individual counseling or therapy, or for my use in defending myself in legal proceedings instituted by you, for use by the Secretary of Health and Human Services to investigate my compliance with HIPAA, required by law, and the use or disclosure is limited to the requirement of such law, required by law for certain health oversight activities pertaining to the originator of the psychotherapy notes, required by a coroner who is performing duties authorized by law, required to help avert a serious threat to the health and safety of others. So if you're a danger to yourself or to others, I will have to break confidentiality to let the proper authorities know, and to be able to get you the care that you need. But generally the psychotherapy notes I'm not going to be sharing unless it is specifically requested or you specifically give authorization for that. There could be other information in your file that's shared, but the psychotherapy notes have to be specifically asked for.
Okay.
Marketing purposes, I'm not going to share any of your information for marketing purposes. Same with I'm not going to be selling your PHI information, so you don't have to worry about that. Certain disclosures do not require your authorization. Again, that is by following the state and federal laws and dependent on the courts and stuff like that. For public health activities, including reported suspected child, elder, or dependent adult abuse, or preventing or reducing a serious threat to anyone's health or safety. For health oversight activities, including audits and investigations, for judicial and administrative proceedings, including responding to a court or administrative order, for law enforcement purposes, including reporting crimes occurring on my premises, to coroners and medical examiners when such individuals are performing duties authorized by law. And for research purposes, including studying and comparing the mental health of patients who receive one form of therapy versus those who receive another form of therapy for the same condition, which generally for research, your specific identifying information isn't shared. It's just the other details. Specialized government functions, for workers' compensation purposes, appointment reminders, and health-related benefits or services. I may use and disclose your PHI to contact you to remind you that you have an appointment with me. I may also disclose your PHI to tell you about treatment alternatives or other healthcare services or benefits that I offer. Certain uses and disclosures require you to have the opportunity to object. Disclosures to family, friends, others, bosses, whatever it is outside of the healthcare, line and the government, you can choose what I share or don't share, who I talk to or who I don't talk to. If anybody were to call me asking if I treat you, I would give the standard I can neither confirm nor deny that statement or that I, provide care for that person. And which is another next thing in our notes that I'm gonna put in my notes is I know that we're doing psychotherapy over the internet and through video. Is it safe to send you messages through text messages and through email to
Yes.
send you appointment reminders? Okay. And with this, you have this following rights with respect to your protected health information, right to request limits on uses and disclosures, and you have the right to ask me not to use or disclose certain PHI for treatment, payment, or healthcare operation purposes. I'm not required to agree to your request, and I may say no if I believe it would affect your healthcare. You have the right to request restrictions for out-of-pocket expenses paid for in full. You have the right to request restrictions on disclosures of your PHI to health plans for payment or healthcare operations purposes of the PHI pertains solely to a healthcare item or healthcare services that you have paid for out-of-pocket. You have the right to choose. Oops, I'm like, oh, it just disappeared. You have the right to choose how I send your PHI to you. It could be through the mail, it could be email, text message, call you. You can just let me know. And you have the right to see and get copies of your PHI other than your psychotherapy notes. And you have the right to get a list of disclosures I have made. And you have the right to request a list of instances in which I have disclosed your PHI for purposes other than treatment, payment, or healthcare operations, or for which you provided me with an authorization.
Okay. That all sounds
Thank you.
good.
Thank you for bearing with me. I know that this is a lot of stuff. Um, and like I said, I just like to cover it all because sometimes people don't know the extent of how we can share. So like something I was surprised by when I got into this field was sharing information with a coroner. I didn't think that that was going to be something listed. And so I just like to make sure that you're fully aware. You have the right to correct or update your PHI if you believe that there's a mistake or a piece of important information that's missing. You have the right to request that I correct the information. You can get a paper or electronic copy of this notice, and you have the right to get a paper copy. And the Board of Behavioral Sciences receives and responds to complaints regarding services provided within the scope of practice. Marriage and family therapists, licensed educational psychologists, clinical social workers, or professional clinical counselors. You may contact the board at any time. Their information is there. Again, you will have a copy of this for yourself. And so if you ever need to reach out to them, you have the ability to. And so
Okay.
down here at the bottom, it is acknowledging the receipt of the privacy notice of the HIPAA, which is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And so you'll sign and date down there. All right. Now on to the good stuff. Psychotherapy includes risks and benefits and requires an investment of your time and energy in order to make the process of therapy successful. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, you know, just talking always. There can be times where you're struggling and it's hard and it causes emotional discomfort. And it can, there will be changes in your relationship and temporary worsening of your symptoms. And this should all subside as work progresses. It's just about holding on and continuing. And psychotherapy has been known to be beneficial and effective. It helps to reduce distress, increase your ability to handle difficult life circumstances, and your coping skills, enhance your relationships, and improve your all around emotional, mental, and spiritual well being, just to name a few. Please note that you have the right to request changes in treatment. If you don't think that the type of therapy method that we're using is benefiting you, we can always change. We can integrate different kinds. And, circumstances change all the time. And so, something that fit you 2 months ago may not be something that's fitting you now. Different circumstances bring up different topics. And so we can change that at any time. And we are really working together in this instead of it just being a one-way type of relationship. I'm really here to encourage you for your growth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ethically bound to suggest suspension of treatment if progress is not being made or if the financial agreement is not being met. If either of these situations arise, you'll be given appropriate referrals that you can choose to explore. Initially, when we meet, I will be evaluating your needs or the needs of your child, which I'm evaluating you and not your child. But if things change, based on this evaluation, I'll provide you with my initial impressions, which may include a diagnosis and treatment recommendations. Generally, sessions are scheduled for once a week. However, we may decide to meet more or less frequently. Just depends on your schedule, my schedule, your needs. I am a marriage and family therapist trainee. And what that means is that I'm currently attending school and in the interning practicum stage. And so I have a supervisor that I meet with weekly and I discuss my progress with and areas that I can improve in. And they help provide me with like more insight to provide the best care and services to be able to help you. And it's required through my school that I record one session per term, which a term is 8 weeks. And it's done through video or audio to discuss and gain feedback from my instructor and my peers in my cohort. You're not required to participate in this, and it's your choice. My scope of practice is individual, couple, family, and group therapy. All other services can be referred to another organization upon request. And I abide by the legal and ethical principles that govern privilege and confidentiality. And in general, any communication between you and I is going to be confidential. I'm not going to be sharing it with anybody else. I am legally required to act to prevent you from physically harming yourself or others when there is clear and imminent danger of that happening. I'm legally required to report suspected abuse of a child, elderly person, and dependent adult. I may have to release records if ordered to do so by the court. Non-custodial parents may be able to gain access to the minor child's treatment records if that were ever to come up. And in the event of an account becoming delinquent, it may be necessary for me to turn the account over to collection services.
Okay.
And I will make every effort to make appointments that are mutually convenient for you and I. I'm not going to schedule appointments that you can't make. And sometimes I can be available on the weekends. Sometimes I can be available in the evening. It's case by case situation. If there's an emergency, I can schedule an emergency meeting with you, although it does increase the rates. And also appointments that are not canceled 24 hours in advance will be charged for the full amount of time reserved for that session. You are responsible for no-shows and last-minute cancels. And please note that insurance companies and victim witness will not reimburse for no-shows or last-minute cancels. 2 consecutive no-show appointments may result in the termination of treatment. Payment is expected by cash, card, or check at the beginning of each session, or we can figure out a payment plan or a payment situation. I do accept insurance, and it says that down here too, insurance and billing. And so the initial fees for individuals and couples is $130. Individual therapy is $115. And so if you have insurance and I'm billing your insurance, I will bill them first, and whatever is remaining, I will send you. If you have a copay, I will charge that copay at the time of service.
Okay.
And telephone calls, you can call me anytime. If I'm available, I will answer, and we can chit chat or talk for a few minutes. But if it's something that's going to be an extended amount of time, that will constitute me charging you for services. If you have an emergency, you can call 911, your family physician, or the helpline, and the phone number is listed here, or you can go to the nearest emergency room. And insurance is just saying that you are responsible for your payments and for your services, and so you take responsibility for whatever charges you incur.
Okay.
And that is it. Do you have any questions?
No, like I said before, I'm pretty familiar with it, just because of my work practices and everything. So I pretty well understand all of it.
Yeah, it can become pretty redundant. And so thank you so much for your patience and understanding with going over all of this stuff. If you have any questions in the future, don't hesitate to ask. You can, email me, message me, call me, whatever works for you. And so from here, I would love to get started on why you would like to receive services, what your symptoms are, and how I can help you. I am going to go ahead and stop sharing this and we will get to that.